Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, a GeneaVlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to Puerto Rican 23andMe DNA test results, Shocking, by Natalia Garcia. I'm guessing this is going to be a pretty good video because with Puerto Rican DNA test results, it's very likely that you're going to see a big mix of European, Native American, African ancestry, and it's very possible to even have Asian ancestry outside of the Native American ancestry. I don't personally know a whole lot about the population groups which make up the Puerto Rican people. I know that they are a very mixed group of people, and I do know that there are a lot of people who are Puerto Rican that have strong African ancestry. So I wouldn't be surprised if she has a pretty big chunk of African ancestry, and even just within her African ancestry, that could be quite mixed. She may have West African, East African, North African, although knowing how the slave trade has affected most of the Americas in terms of ancestry, it's very likely it'll mostly be West African. But I'm hoping this will be a really good video. But before we do jump into it, please be sure to give this a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Also, be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notifications on future videos. I will also be posting videos early to my Patreon, so if you'd like early access to videos, be sure to join my Patreon, which does help me out a whole lot. And be sure to check out my merch at my Teespring store, which I will be linking down below. And with all of that said, now let's jump into the video.
It's crazy. Like, I'm still shook. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natalia, and I know every single video I say I'm so excited for this video, but I truly am very excited. If you guys have been following me for a while or have watched like any of my videos really, then you know that I am a very proud Puerto Rican. I think that this is gonna...
Every Puerto Rican that I've ever known has been very proud of their Puerto Rican ancestry. So I don't think she's alone in that.
It'll be really interesting to figure out what is mixed in me, because if you guys aren't familiar with what a Puerto Rican is, I'm a school you right now real quick. Puerto Ricans are a mixture of Taino Indians, African, and European. And if you don't know how, then you should go look it up, because it's actually quite the story. So the name...
Just based on her saying that, I think she's already going to have a better understanding of these DNA results than a lot of other people, because I know that there are people that'll be Puerto Rican or Dominican or Panamanian or something else like that, and they'll get their DNA results back and it won't mention that exact country. They'll get percentages from other stuff and they'll be like, wait, I thought I was from Puerto Rico. Well, you may be from Puerto Rico, but that's not going to make up your ancestral percentages. So just based on her saying that preface, I've got a really good feeling about this video.
Natives of Puerto Rico were the Tainos, and Puerto Rico originally wasn't Puerto Rico, it was Borinquen, and that's where the term Boricua comes from. Then when the whole European invasion happened, obviously you had them bring tons and tons of African slaves over to the Caribbean islands and over to the Americas in general. And so we are a blended mix of all of those. Some Puerto Ricans show more of their European roots, some show more of their African roots, some show more of the Taino roots. We are literally a blend of all three, and then whatever else you throw in there, which we're about to find out right now. So it says Natalia Garcia, obviously 100% me, and European, I'm 37.6% overall. That's crazy. So after European, it breaks it down into like subgenres. And so it says Southern European, 31.7%. It says Southern Europe, including the Iberian, Italian, and Balkan peninsulas, as well as the island of Malta, is a region defined in great part by the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean has provided transportation routes, keeping these regions connected culturally and genetically. So I'm assuming that means that Southern European is just a blend of people from all of those different areas.
Somewhat right. It does get better defined in some of those population groups, which I did see she has. But for the most part, that is right. That because of the migration routes and because the Mediterranean Sea kept all of those groups migrating easily between one another, there is a little bit of difficulty in defining those. So a lot of times you will get broadly Southern European. Sometimes it might be Southeastern European, which is then it's kind of pointing more towards like Italy and Greece and places like that along the Mediterranean. But it definitely, you know, if you bring in the Iberian Peninsula, and you even, you know, there's a lot of connection also to North Africa. So yeah, she's doing a lot better with this than most people that I see when they're looking at their DNA results. She's truly understanding the history behind it and not just looking at DNA results and trying to define it based on country lines, because country lines, country borders have changed so much over the past couple hundred years, not even mentioning the past 500 years. And when you're talking about dealing with all sorts of ancestries, such as what she has, where she's got African, Native American, or as she mentioned specifically Taino, and European, you're going to have that.
It's not really all that clear. Oh, this is cool. It says, Natalia, your DNA suggests that 21.8% of your ancestry is Spanish and Portuguese. Spanish, I figured, obviously the Spanish language and everything comes from Spain. It says, Spain is a possible match, and Spain has 19 administrative regions, and we found the strongest evidence of your ancestry in the following 7 regions: Galicia, Canary Islands, Castile and Leon, Andalusia, La Rioja, Catalonia, which is where I was, so I guess I was with my people in Barcelona, and the community of Madrid, which is interesting. Then it says broadly Southern European, 9.9%. Southern Europe, including the Iberian, Italian, and Balkan peninsulas, as well as the island of Malta as a region. That's what I just read.
Yeah, so basically what she was saying before, where she was like, well, so it means I'm all a part of that. When it gives her that broadly Southern European, that's basically what they're saying is you're from somewhere in that area in the Mediterranean Sea community, sort of, but we can't really tell because this DNA is showing up in all of the population group studies that we have, or is showing up in many of the population group studies that we have. So that's kind of what's happening here.
Broadly Southern European DNA matches several specific populations and is difficult to assign to just one.
Yep.
I didn't really learn anything from that, but okay. Next it says Northwestern European, 3.4%. Northwestern Europeans are represented by people from as far west as Ireland, as far north as Norway, as far east as Finland, and as far south as France. These countries rim the North and Baltic Seas and have been connected throughout much of the history by those waters. Then, wow, look at this. It says I'm 1.7% British and Irish. Look at that. What? I just came from Dublin, and again, I was like with my people. So when I click on British and Irish, it doesn't break it down the way that it did for Spain and Portugal, which sucks. Probably because it's such a tiny percentage. And then it says broadly Northwestern European, 1.6%, and broadly European, 2.5%. Again, that was under the subgenre of Northwestern European. So what it looks like it does is it just like generalizes it, and it says European, and then it breaks it down into those subgenres to let you know
exactly right
where those percentages come from.
Although how correct those are, that's questionable.
Wow, I thought I would have more. This is surprising. It says I'm 35.8% sub-Saharan African. West African, so again, starting the breakdown, is 26.4%. And then that breaks down into Nigerian, 12.6%. Senegambian, and Ghanaian, 7.9%. Ghanaian, I know it's Ghana. Ghanaian. Sorry. That Liberian and Sierra Leonean comes down to 4.3%. And then broadly West African is 1.6%. After that, it says Congolese and Southern East African 7.4%, and that breaks down to Angolan and Congolese 4.7%, Southern East African 0.7%, and then broadly Congolese and Southern East African 2.0%. I have to look up what these broadly genres are because that doesn't tell me anything. Like, I know I have African in me, hello, but that's interesting. That's interesting. And then it says African hunter-gatherer 0.2%, and then broadly some sub-Saharan African 1.8%. All right, next it says East Asian and Native American 14.5%. Native American being 12.6%, and broadly East Asian and Native American 1.9%. So this is interesting because I don't know if with Native American, I guess Tainos are blended in that. I thought that I had a lot of Taina in me. I was honestly expecting like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And it doesn't look that way. It's literally a chunk of European, a chunk of African, and some Native American. And then lastly, we have Western Asian and North African 4%, North African 2.8%, and broadly Western Asian.
Interesting.
There you go. I just click back. Broadly Western Asian and North African 1.2%. It says that it left 7.8% unassigned, so I guess that is too broad to figure out. Whoa, so check this out. So it says, Natalia, your DNA suggests that you have Caribbean ancestors. Well, duh. And then it says, oh, this is cool. Okay. So it says, in the last 200 years, your ancestors may have lived in the following locations. Puerto Rico, a highly likely match. Duh. And it says, wow, it says Puerto Rico has 78 administrative regions, and we found the strongest evidence of your ancestry in the following 10 regions. Ponce, which I personally don't have any family that I know in Ponce.
Now, I think I've said this in other videos, and I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to read up on the white paper, and usually I don't focus too much on this stuff because I don't deal with that many 23andMe kits because I'm not the biggest fan of them for genetic matches, but they are useful. Anyway, I think the way they're coming up with this is it's using her genetic matches, the locations that they enter in for where their ancestors came from, and then it's basically finding where the majority came from, and then that's where it's coming up with this list. So for Ponce, it's very likely that she has a bunch of genetic matches where they list that as where their ancestors came from, and so on. So that's how I believe they come up with these lists. I'm not 100% sure. So if anyone does know, please link down below, especially if you know what page of the white paper it is, or if there's a specific page where 23andMe talks about it. Because I'm sure I'm going to forget to look it up after I do this video and start editing it.
So that's interesting because that's number 1. San Juan, Utuado, Arecibo, Mayagüez, Aguadilla, Cabo Rojo, Yauco, San Sebastián, and Lares. This is crazy because like Jabucoa is where I know that my mom's side of the family is from, and my dad's side of the family is like Guayama, Rio Piedra, and neither of those are on here. And then, look at this. This is crazy. It says that another possible match for my DNA is in Cuba. Haceré que vola. Am I Cuban? Am I gonna have to start making some videos?
You might not be Cuban, but you may have relatives from a possibly somewhat recent ancestor who then immigrated to Cuba. So, if you had a 5th great grandfather that came from Cuba, or maybe went from Puerto Rico to Cuba, or maybe you had a 5th great grandfather who was Cuban and went over to Puerto Rico and then became part of your family, then it would make sense that you have a lot of cousins in Cuba because his descendants would also be in Cuba. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It could be, like a 2nd great grandfather, 2nd great grandma, not necessarily super far back. It'd be very interesting to see her family tree versus these results, or at least what she was expecting based on the family tree, because she does mention where her mom's side's from and where her dad's side's from in Puerto Rico, but she doesn't really mention about her grandparents or her great grandparents.
For my Cubanos out there, this is crazy. I did not know what to expect. I guess I'm just that beautiful blend of what Puerto Ricans are. If you guys have done this test, please leave your results down below. One thing that I kind of want to do is buy the Ancestry DNA test and do that and compare my results. Let me know if that's something that you guys would be interested in seeing.
This is from October 2019. Maybe she did it.
Were you like kind of right on the money? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm just like, this is so crazy. Like, this is so cool. As always, do not forget to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell.
Hit that subscribe.
Every time I post a video. Do not forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
All right, that was a pretty good video. You know, her understanding of the history behind it makes it so that she can understand her results a lot better, because it's when I see these videos of people looking at their DNA results, they don't really understand the history of how populations make up other populations. But as I said, it would be very interesting to see her actual family history, her genealogy, where her ancestors lived, and maybe she could figure out how she has relatives in Cuba and why it's coming up with that. And I would say her results were pretty spot on with what I was expecting. She had European, she had African, she had Native American, and like I was saying, it was very likely she would have a mixture of some other stuff than the typical. And, you know, she didn't just have West African, she had East African and North African. She also had West Asian in there. She had a somewhat good mix of the European as well. You know, she had a lot of Southern European, which makes a lot of sense, Spain, Portugal. But then also she had some Northwestern European, you know, pretty much kind of what I would expect for someone from Puerto Rico or the Caribbean, or, you know, South America, Central America. Not very surprising. Depending on where you're testing in those areas, it could vary greatly, you know, because all the population groups of those different areas differed, and the history behind them will change that. Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It's completely free to do so. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. I'll see you in my next video.